Struggling to monitor the growing threat landscape, pressure to reduce costs, security skill gaps, facing compliance issues? These issues can translate to operational, financial, regulatory, and reputational risks to your business. Checkpoint can help. Checkpoint combines an MSSP enablement program, cloud-delivered multi-tenant management, SOC platform, and superior threat intelligence capabilities to give MSSPs the confidence to grow profitably at a reduced risk. Checkpoint is 100% channel-driven. We partner to deliver the best security everywhere. Visit msspalert.com/checkpoint. Welcome back, everybody, to Cyber for Hire, the Managed Security Podcast. Once again, I'm Bradley Barth with SC Media. In the first half of our show, we talked with Don Pecca at FNTS about positioning the vCISO or managed security provider as a key business voice. But right now, I'd like to welcome back my co-host Ryan Morris from Morris Management Partners, because it's time for us to examine our InfoSec news and trends topic of the week, presenting our big idea. In security, MSSPs snubbing web security, why websites take a back seat to network needs. It's understandable why many organizations' cyber investments heavily concentrate on protecting core networks and data centers from breaches and ransomware attacks. But let's not overlook the importance of ensuring that your website remains operational, especially when it directly drives revenue through sales or advertisements. Threats such as DDoS, bots, e-skimmers, malvertising, and drive-by downloads continue to plague websites. So why aren't there more managed service providers offering specialized help in this area? That's the issue we're going to be addressing today. And Ryan, as always, we're going to get right to the heart of the matter. So, it's not that there are no managed service providers out, security service providers out there doing website security, but it's definitely a little harder to find than some of your other standard security services. Can you give us a sense as to, in your mind, how underdeveloped is this market?
Yeah, it is unfortunately it's an assumption of progress that has not yet been made that leads to a massive blind spot. I think a lot of people in the business side, on the client side of consuming these services, and on the service provider side, they like to work from the framework of, website security. That's not new. It's been around for a long time. We solved that years ago. Everything is fine, right? I think that is a basic misunderstanding of the progress that the bad side of our industry continues to make in new threat vectors, new attack methods, and new technologies that did not used to be available. It begins with that blind spot of, that's the easy part. It's not nearly as complicated. We've already solved it. No, we haven't, and we need to pay attention to that. The second thing that I would highlight is that there's this unfortunate kind of thought about the website as, real business gets done on my network. That's where my business applications live. It's where my financial information is. All of my customer data, all of that stuff lives inside my network. So that's vital. The website, that's just an online brochure and some marketing stuff. That's not all mission critical information. And we can get to that once we've solved all of the quote unquote real problems. I think that we need to begin from a philosophy point of view of, the website is the most public face that we have in the world. And whether you use it for e-commerce and transactional purposes, or if it literally is just an online brochure, it is impossible to have a website that does not have attack vectors. And people don't need to just pay attention to the information that's on your webpage. That is an access point into other systems, and we need to stop thinking of it as just a subordinate communications resource and start thinking of it as, it's like your eyes. Everybody always says the eyes are the key to the soul. I'm not thinking of it in those kinds of philosophical terms. I'm saying, your eyes are the most vulnerable place on a human body where viruses, infections, other things can enter our protected environment. The website is very much like that in business technology terminology. That is where we are most likely to get other unknown visitors, where it's where we're most likely to see an attack begin, and therefore we need to make sure that that's locked down before everything else that is quote unquote less connected to the internet.
Ryan, is part of the problem here also that the field of website security is a little bit of its own unique animal? It's almost in a way its own separate branch of cybersecurity that has certain unique threats that requires a specialized expertise.
It is, and I mean that's true with all of these neighborhoods of cybersecurity, right? It's one thing to say, let's use a layered approach and we can protect our stack as well as our data, and that'll solve all the problems. Well, when we do network access in a wired network environment, that's a different discipline from wireless networking security, which is a different discipline from transactional and database security. Website security is a specialized animal. It's one thing to deploy quote unquote basic tools that, if you read the vendor marketing literature, it sounds an awful lot like they're saying, just install my software, everything will be fine. The software will solve the problem. No, it won't. It requires specialized evaluation and assessment and pen testing type skills, but it also requires different alert categories, different levels of what is normal behavior in your environment to identify variations. Web security is not just a tool that you install. It's detailed and specialized best practices. And to add one more of those areas, it's really easy for a cyber professional who's already got 10 things on their plate to look at this and go, I roll. I don't want to learn another one. Let's just install a tool and call it good, and then we'll get back to what we are experts in. This is it's a lot of information that we need to process on your web. You'll get inevitably more traffic on your website than probably the rest of your internal network environment combined, right? It's a very busy, very public place where, the public can just stop by and see what's going on. Well, it's really hard unless you're paying careful attention to know, is that a casual visitor? Is that somebody who's pinging my security and testing the perimeter defenses? Is it something that's part of a pattern? Is it something that we need to alert and be aware of? We don't want to overreact to every new visitor that comes to our website. Right? It's funny. Internal controls. We liked this idea of identity and access management. You don't get access to my network environment unless I know who you are, what you need access to, and that you have authorization, and then I will give you credentials. Okay, that's literally impossible in a website environment. You can't know everybody that's about to visit your website unless, of course, you don't want any new visitors to come to your website, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a website, right? So this is very sophisticated technology, and it requires a different approach to, oh no, there's somebody new and they're doing something nobody's ever done, and then realizing that's just normal behavior on the website, not a pattern of malicious attack that's going on.
Ryan, I had mentioned in my little intro that I read a number of threats that are associated with websites. So, for organizations that do need help with their website security, certainly there would be a lot of SMBs that qualify for that because they're in need of help because they don't have their own webmaster, they don't have a large IT staff looking over all of this. Where are their biggest needs in terms of website security? What threats are most prevalent and important for them to be able to shore up and defend against, that they might want to pull in some outside help?
I think of this in all of the threats are real. Let's not be naive about these things. Those kinds of attacks are happening. But I look at two areas of vulnerability that are especially difficult. One is the idea of hijacking, right? Where my entirely legitimate and real website gets taken over by a bad actor, and it is served up to users who think they're coming to my website, and it's a delivery mechanism for malware. That is a place where I think we have an especially wide threat opportunity, and it's something that's really difficult for the end user to know the difference, and they're not like somebody in an internal department who can send an email to the CISO and say, hey, saw this bad behavior. I didn't really understand. Maybe you should check it out. These are customers. These are potential customers. They have no access to the notification and alert systems. So even if they do have a bad experience and get some malware delivered, they don't know who to tell. So it's one of those where we see the penetration versus the recognition and the remediation. That length of time tends to be longer in a web hijacking environment than anything else. The second area that I would really highlight is the web skimming, right? In an AI world where large language models are trained on every single thing that's ever been published to the web, if you put text out there, if you put marketing information out there, product catalog information out there, all of that information is now part of a large language model, and it is very easy for some bad actor to mimic your voice, to borrow enough legitimate information, and then just spice in the little pieces of misinformation or potential ransomware phishing vectors. We live in a completely different world now with AI, and your website is no longer only in your domain of control. No, we wish that it was, right? It's my website. I get to say what is published on my website, and I'm in charge of how that information is delivered. Not anymore, you're not. You live in a world where AI is already mimicking your voice. It knows everything you've ever published out there, and that produces a new level of vulnerability for future attacks that are going to sound incredibly real, right? It used to be that we could very easily recognize, well, this is legitimate language, and that is mimic language from a bad actor, because they would use bad grammar, English as a second language. There would be some telltale signs. These large language models, they're getting pretty good. They sound like real human writing, and if it is based on your product catalog, it's going to take a very careful eye to recognize the difference between real messages and spoofed messages that can be used for bad purposes.
All right, so Ryan, we've established that website security is a discipline that is underrepresented right now in the MSSP and greater managed security services space. So let's imagine a scenario now where this is a golden opportunity for some MSSPs to jump in and say, let's take advantage of that. Let's seize the day and fill this gap in the market. There's a lot of people in need out there. Let's say you're maybe one of those organizations right now. What do you do to make this happen and position yourself as a leader in website security? What steps do you take to maybe pursue this particular market opportunity, which seems to be out there waiting for someone to take advantage?
There is a tremendous opportunity and need in the marketplace. It's all based on credibility, right? Like the decision makers who are responsible for any business system, whether it's your website or your internal network, the boss of that system is going to take advice from people they know, people they trust, and a new voice, even if it's right, even if it's telling a story that needs to be heard, that new voice, it's going to take a long time to cut through. I would advocate a channel strategy, right? Think of this not in terms of just you and I direct approaching the end user and saying, your website is vulnerable. We can help you protect that. Who does that decision maker already believe when it comes to a web conversation? Well, probably their web designer, if they have a marketing agency that's built that and is administering the environment. If they have a technical designer, a web developer, a programming asset that has built out some of these capabilities, that is an established route to credibility. Let's go through those individuals and give them an upsell opportunity. Think of it like this. If I'm a marketing agency and I provide website services to clients, wouldn't it be a good idea if I could say to those clients, you know, in addition to just making your website look cool and have some good interactive functionality, I live in the real world and cybersecurity is an issue, and we can now also, in addition to a cool website, we can give you a secure website. And we can address that from the original strategy in. What kind of a client's going to say no? No, I want to have an insecure website. That's the kind I prefer, right? No, they're not going to do that. If it's, let's make you a better web environment and also let's make sure it's secure, that's not an upsell. That's just responsible professional behavior. Well, that ad agency ain't an expert in cybersecurity. Don't expect them to be. You be their white label or third-party supplier where they can just bring your services into their client environment. If I can get one marketing agency to agree that I'm a good provider and we can be white labeled into their environment, that now gives me access to their entire install base. That's a very efficient multiplying strategy that'll allow us to get to many end users without having to wait a year or two to build a brand of credibility on website security. All right, that's our way of thinking about this topic in security. What do you guys think? We would love to get some feedback and some opinions and some real-world experiences. So for those of you in the audience listening in here today, let us know what your thoughts are and if you have any other experiences and recommendations, or if you still have questions. You can reach us via our email address at cyberforhire@cyberriskalliance.com, and you can hit us up on our show page as well in the notes and comments there. We would love to keep this conversation going. In the meantime, let's move on to our next segment, which is something that we like to refer to as Dear Cyber for Hire. This is an opportunity that we take to play relationship counselor between the professionals who sell security services and the ones who consume those services. No matter what the technology is, the relationship often matters more than what our software and service capabilities are. So we've written this letter in a way to mask the identities of the innocent, but make no mistake, this is a real situation that we deal with out there in the world. Bradley, what is the relationship challenge that we're dealing with today?
Well, you're about to find out, Ryan, because we're back with even more juicy MSSP melodrama, and this one comes from the client side of the relationship. So fellas, cue the music. Dear Cyber for Hire, I'm all for keeping appearances in a relationship, but sometimes I feel like the marriage I have with my MSSP partner has become a little artificial. Like a couple who keeps posting Instagram photos of their amazing family adventures when they never actually do half the things they pretend to do. In my case, my MSSP keeps pushing me to do a glowing testimonial or case study that they can use to bring in more clients. Don't get me wrong, things are good, I'm happy, but not everything is as perfect as they want to make it out to sound, and I don't want to be insincere or misleading. Plus, not everyone needs to know how I'm handling my security needs, especially cyber criminals who may be paying attention. Please help. How can I stop being my MSSP's trophy spouse? Sincerely, Testy over Testimonials in Toledo. Ryan, what can the client do in a relationship or a situation like this? I mean, at the very least, they could maybe hold out for some pricing incentives or something maybe in exchange for a testimonial, but I'm not sure in this scenario that's necessarily going to do the trick. What else can be done here?
This is a great conversation because this is an area where endorsements and testimonials will make more difference than other areas of commerce, right? Like if I provide advertising services or if I provide business consulting services, testimonials about what I did and how good it was and how valuable the client found that's going to be helpful. But in a world of like trial by fire, not just the theory and strategy of business, but the real practice of cybersecurity, everybody's marketing brochure sounds great, right? Everybody can say, we've got all these years of experience and we've got methodologies and the most advanced capabilities. Yeah, everybody says that, but it only really is believable when somebody can say, in the real world, we use their services, that bad stuff happened to us and everything turned out okay. That will make more of a difference in the accelerating the sales cycle for cybersecurity providers, I believe, than any other discipline of technology and managed services. This is a proof-based service. And the evidence needs to come not from me, because if I'm the service provider and I say, my services are great, that's not communication, that's promotion, right? And everybody is going to take that with a grain of salt, but it's a very valuable thing. So I set that up to say, I understand why we want those testimonials, but I also understand exactly why a customer might be reluctant to give it. I don't want bad guys to know what my approach is, and I also don't want anybody in my client base to know, well, we had this one time where we were breached and ... Holy cow, everybody just stopped listening and they said, wait, what? You were breached? And you gave a testimonial about that? And now I have to question how secure your environment is. I think if I were on the client side of this conversation, I would be very reluctant to give a detailed testimonial about service structure or about any remediation experiences, which are the really valuable things. I would only ever be willing to speak about either, the general fluffy stuff of we like them a lot and they provide a great relationship, or about really very compact elements of the service relationship, like the onboarding experience to get all of my users up and running was flawless and it happened in a very tight time frame. Or, we have regular reviews with our service provider to make sure we're not just assuming that we are safe, but we are looking at things on a regular time cadence and we're always up to date. By the way, those are much more effective marketing messages than just the general, we love them kind of testimonials. And it's a lot easier to get your clients to be willing to agree to give that precise level of testimonial. So let's not just go to our customers and say, will you endorse me? Let's go to them and say, will you endorse me for this one very specific element of the service we provide or the relationship and the method we use to deliver these services? I don't have to say everything is perfect and nothing will ever go wrong, because I might not be comfortable saying that about my service provider. I just endorse that very specific use case. And it happens to be not only easier to get the customer to agree to, but dramatically more believable by the person who's reading that testimonial. So let's not stop asking for testimonials. Let's just stop asking for blanket endorsements, and we will get way better participation from our client side.
All right, sound advice. As always, Ryan, another relationship saved. Hopefully our listeners have learned from this and don't make the same mistake. And remember, if you've been struggling with your managed security services relationship, whether you're the user or the provider, we want to hear from you. So please write to us at cyberforhire@cyberriskalliance.com, and we might use your letter in a future episode. All right, well, it's almost time to wrap things up, but before we go, it's time for us to get a little random as we share with you, drumroll please, our irrelevant news of the week. This is a real news pitch that Ryan or I have received in our inboxes for reasons that are entirely inexplicable to us. Are you ready, Ryan?
I am ready. Let's hear the randomness.
All right. Well, really, this time around, it's not so much of a news pitch, but rather a pitch I got from a news writer, a freelancer, asking me if I was interested in, brace yourself for this one, back to school articles. Now, this might be the first time ever that I've seen a reference to end of summer and back to school before summer even got started yet. And that is very depressing. I mean, I get it. Some editorial magazines plan out their calendars well in advance. Fashion companies, they plan, right, their fall collections, whatever it is, like 9 months in advance or whatever. But come on, like, can we enjoy the summer a little bit before we already start thinking about the fall? Like, I know it's weird, but for me, I still, when I see that first back to school commercial, a chill still runs up my spine as if I was still in high school, knowing that I just had a few sweet weeks left of summer sun before I was like back in the hallways of school again. I don't know how you feel about that, Ryan.
You know what? I have that exact level of emotional reaction. You know, when you start to see the Christmas decorations in the store before Halloween, you go, "Come on, can we enjoy the seasons as they come?" But while any of those are frustrating, none of them hurts more than the back to school message, right? Even all these years after school, when we don't have to go back in the fall, that was the end of innocence every single year. When you were an 8-year-old and somebody said back to school and you were outside like running through the sprinklers, you went, but I just got started. I literally just am getting good at summer. Can you let me enjoy this? And it gets harder and harder as we go. I agree. It's the responsible thing to plan ahead. But you know what? Don't harsh my mellow quite so early. It's still springtime. We're not anywhere near summer. Let's save those back to school conversations for a time after I've been able to go outside and enjoy some relaxing summer activities.
Absolutely. I always try to console myself or take solace in the fact that I'm like, well, at least fantasy football season's coming up. That's what I cling on to. Like, at least I have that. But yeah, other than that, let us enjoy the summer, right? So speaking of summer break, school is out on this particular episode of Cyber for Hire. But don't fret, folks, because we'll be back again next week with episode number 23. Meanwhile, feel free to check out even more cybersecurity podcast content on the SC Media, MSSP Alert, and Channel E2E websites. Until next time, I'm Bradley Barth.
And I am Ryan Morris, and we would love to keep this conversation going. So please share with us any of your questions, comments, and advice on the business of cybersecurity, and we'll keep the conversation going on the next episode of Cyber for Hire, your inside source for cyber outsourcing.